Hello there, and welcome back to What the Dog podcast, where we talk about what your dog's doing, why they're doing it, and can we fix it? My name is Katie. I'm the owner here at For Pete's Sake Dog Training and the trainer, the everything. And what I try and focus on in this podcast is giving pet owners quick, simple, go-to answers for any frustrations they're having with their dog. So my podcast episodes tend to not be very long, which is okay because I know we're all busy. Now, today may not necessarily be an issue that you're having with your dog, but I want to sit and talk about reward-based training. And one of the common misconceptions with reward-based training is that you're just bribing the dog. Or people tend to think my dog will only do a behavior if I bribe them. So I want to talk today about bribing versus rewarding and how those are different when we do use bribing, because there are times where we kind of have to use it, and then how we can transition to where we're not bribing our dog, but we're rewarding our dog for doing the wanted behavior that we have. So like I said, I'm going to get into the different training methods in a podcast episode. And there are different methods out there. Everybody has the right to their own opinion. I'm just going to throw that out there. So I'm not going to hate anybody for choosing what methods they'd like to choose. I'm simply going to stand by and promote the methods that I believe are truly beneficial and, in my opinion, better to use for dogs for not only getting the behaviors that we expect in our dogs, but also that are good psychologically for them as well. Now, with that, I tend to use reward-based, I do use reward-based training methods and even consider myself fear-free because I want to make sure that I'm working with a dog who is not fearful and they're not doing behaviors based on the fear of, punishment. And again, I'll get into all that later. So when I use reward-based training, generally speaking, what that means is that I reward a dog for doing a behavior that I want. And that reward is usually positive. It's something good that they like. So they're going to continue doing that behavior. I like it. They like what comes after the behavior. It's great, right? So that's, long story short, what reward-based training means. I tend to hear clients say this. I tend to see people on social media saying, well, you're just bribing the dog, or the dog will only do the behavior for treats. And while there are some situations that may seem like it's true, there are ways that we can overcome that. And depending on the behavior, personally, I may not care if I have to bribe the dog in order to get them to do it. So again, that's my mindset. But I want to talk to you first about differentiating between bribing and rewarding, right? So with reward-based training, I'm going to use treats as the example of the reward because we do tend to see those the most. However, I do use toys, I do use affection, I do use my voice. I use a lot of different rewards based on the dog and what the dog likes. I mean, generally that's what you want. If the dog likes it, we're going to use that, right? But we do tend to see treats used a lot. It is a lot easier to use treats. It's a lot faster. It's a lot more obvious in communication, but it is not the only reward. Sorry, my dog's licking his leg. It's a leg he can lick. He just had surgery, and I want to make sure he's not licking a leg that he shouldn't be licking. So I'm going to be checking on him. He's right behind me. So when using reward-based training and treats, when we are first teaching a behavior, I do tend to, quote, bribe the dog in order to help them learn what I want. So for example, if I'm teaching my dog to lay down, what I tend to do is have a treat in my hand. They can smell it, they can see it. I start the treat at their nose, and then I lure them where they follow the treat to the ground and out. And that gets them to lay down. So luring, in a sense, is a way of bribing because I'm showing them the treat first. And I'm saying, hey, follow this treat. And once they do a certain behavior, then they get it, right? So yes, I am bribing them. Really, I think of that as helping them understand what I want them to do. I'm not going to use my hand to push their body down on the ground. The dog is doing the behavior themselves with the help of following the food, right? When I'm teaching a come when called, a lot of the times what I do is either I have a treat in my hand, or honestly, 9 times out of 10, if I just kind of bend over and have my hand out like I'm offering my dog a treat, he'll come running because he thinks there's one there. So technically, that is a little bit of bribery because I'm saying, hey, do you want this? Come to me to get it, right? Now, in some situations where if my dog is out in the yard and maybe he's trying to eat who knows what stuff that he's finding in the grass, and I don't want him to eat that. And if it takes me saying his name and he looks at me and me bending over, like offering him a treat to get him to come to me, I'm fine with that. Like if that's what works, cool, right? Then I'll go inside and I'll get him a treat for rewarding him then after for coming to me. So there are some situations where personally, I don't care if a bribe is all it takes for my dog to do that behavior. Again, not all the time, just some behaviors. I'm like, whatever, if that worked, cool, love it, right? The thing with dogs that we have to remember is that dogs are animals. They have natural instincts that do not align with living inside a house with humans. So there are things that are very conflicting in their brain where they're like, oh, this is an activity that I really want to do. And us humans are like, I don't, for example, let's say digging in your yard. Destruction tends to be something that is very natural for a dog that people don't like. And so if it takes me a little bit of like convincing otherwise to leave that situation alone for my dog to come to me and leave their natural abilities, their natural wants, what their brain is like, yeah, I get to do this. This is what I want. To leave that situation and come to me, and then I can redirect them somewhere else. If I have to bribe them to do that, cool. Because again, we're fighting natural instincts. I usually see that in very high distracting situations where training has not reached that level of distraction. So that's where I tend to use quote bribery, is where my training has not reached that level yet. Now, we can work to that level. I can work and train my dog to recall off of whatever thing he wants to eat or digging in the yard. And I can have a verbal cue where I say, Pete, come, or whatever it is. And he says, oh, I know that. And that means I get a treat and I come running inside and I get rewarded, right? I didn't have to act like I had a treat. I didn't have to, what is really considered bribing my dog to come to me, because we've trained that enough. And in high distracting situations where he's about to eat something and I say, Pete, come, and he goes, oh, I know that, and he comes running to me, I will then reward him. So that's the difference. I've taught him this cue. I've taught him what it means, and we've practiced in varieties of situations where he does the behavior that I want him to do simply by a vocal cue or even a hand gesture. And then I give him a reward after that treat, petting, toy, whatever it is. That is now reward-based training. You are no longer bribing your dog to do the behavior. You are rewarding them for doing it. And some of you may think, well, yeah, but their brain says, if I do this, then I get a treat. So then therefore it's bribery. And in reality, like, yes, their brain says when X happens, then Y happens. And therefore that's why they're going to do it. If you still think that's bribery, then I think personally your mindset's a little off, because like I said, now we're rewarding for the proper behavior. And it's as simple as, if you think going to work, if getting a paycheck for you going to work is bribery, then you're always going to have that mindset. Like, I'm sorry, but your paycheck for going to work is your reward for going to work, right? So I know there are people who are going to still think that because your dog thinks they're going to get a treat, that's the only reason why they're doing it. And yeah, that's true. because dogs do not have complex brains of humans. They are literally toddlers. I should say adult humans. They are toddlers who are like, oh, 1 + 1 = 2. They are very streamlined, very predictability. Like their brains think in predictions, right? Very simple, not complex at all. So that's how their brain works. This goes along with a mindset that I don't agree with when I own dogs or train dogs, is that dogs should just do what I say when I say. That is not like a respectful relationship. That's just because I said so, you have to be obedient. And that is in my opinion, an ill set mindset to have. And I know that, like, I grew up with a parent who thought that, and it doesn't teach me to respect my parent. It teaches me to just honestly, I don't like, it doesn't teach me respect at all. And that's the type of relationship I want to have with a dog, is a nice, positive, respectful relationship, because they are animals. They are not humans. So there are some things where I may compare dog behavior to human behavior just to help people understand, but they are still dogs, and they still have a dog mindset, and they still think the same way that dogs, animals think. So having rewards based on behaviors that are not normal to dogs. It's not normal for you to leave something very smelly in the yard that you want to roll on or eat to come to me. So I better reward you for that, because that's not easy, right? That's the mindset that I have. So I kind of veered off a little bit, but like I said, I generally just wanted to talk to bribing versus rewarding is really all this is. And if you are still kind of, pondering, diving deep into training methods, I'm going to talk about that another time, and we can dive into that as well. But training methods and how you raise your dogs are all based on the individual opinion, your mindset on the relationship you want to have with your dog, and just generally how you view your dog and understanding how their brain works versus what you think their brain should do tends to be where it differs. I don't want to really go into that too much. But generally, again, bribing is mainly helping your dog learn the behavior, where they may need to have a little incentive of seeing the treat or the toy or something first while you're learning. And then you transition to, well, now I can give that hand behavior, that hand gesture, the visual cue or the vocal cue, and you do the behavior, and then I reward you after. So for example, sometimes some of my clients tell me, well, when the treat pouch is on, my dog listens better. That is, in a way, you could say, well, it's kind of bribery, because their brain is predicting that we're about to train, right? But they're willing to work. So it does help them, quote, listen better. But what you can take that is, okay, when the treat pouch is on in this situation, they're listening, but in this situation, when the treat pouch is off, you feel like they're not listening. That gives you a goal to work towards, right? So you can wean out needing your treat pouch. You can have maybe treats in your pocket instead of in the treat pouch, treats in your hand instead of in the treat pouch. And then it goes into treats are not on you, but you're still rewarding, right? So there are little baby steps we can use to kind of wean out that bribe. And then I simply ask for the behavior, you did it, you get a reward. And like I said, it doesn't always have to be treats. It can be other things. A lot of the times when my dog does something, I use a lot of vocal praise and scratches where he likes to be scratched. Sometimes we play tug. So it just really depends on the situation, what I have in front of me, and, still rewarding my dog for what he did. So that is the gist of what I wanted to kind of start with on this journey of understanding reward-based training and why I use it, and to kind of help, maybe if you were questioning reward-based training as always having to have treats around, you don't always have to have treats around. Like I said, you still want to reward your dog, but it doesn't have to be with food all the time. So we can use other things that our dogs enjoy. And honestly, a lot of dogs, vocal praise or even sometimes physical touch can be a great reward for dogs. So But like I said, I will dive into the quadrants of training later in another podcast because we're at 15 minutes and I feel like you got some busy stuff to do and get on with your day. So I want you to kind of think about that through this next maybe 24 hours after you've listened to this. When are you asking your dog to do something for you, and how are you rewarding them for doing it? Or even if you are rewarding them for doing it, and if you're not, and you feel like that's a behavior you're struggling with, that's probably why. So long story short, a lot of my clients will tell me that coming into the house from outside is a very difficult time where they feel like their dogs aren't listening. So we're probably not rewarding it enough. It honestly is probably the first thing that you need to look at. And two, you're probably using a variety of vocal cues, so they really don't know what's going on. You haven't really trained all those vocal cues. So think about how you communicate with your dog. Are you communicating clearly? And then are you rewarding? And if you're rewarding after and everything's going great, you're doing well. If you feel like you don't know if they really know what you're talking about, then go back to your training. You may have to do a little bribing in the beginning as they learn, and then wean that bribing out to rewarding after you've asked. So I hope that answered some of your questions. Thank you all for joining me again. As always, if you have any questions or want advice on training, feel free to set up a consultation call with me via my website. That's forpetesaketraining.com. Or you can email me if you're having trouble finding anything. Go to my Facebook page, For Pete's Sake Dog Training. That's FUR, For Pete's Sake Dog Training. My email address is forpetessake62, so FUR Pete's Sake, so there's two S's there, 62 at gmail.com. Or if you're looking for more training things to do with your dog, check out my Patreon page. It is a membership page where I have feeding games, webinars for education that are free, but also for $10 a month, you can do my 10-minute training sessions. And I just go over different behaviors that I'm training with dogs. They're about 15 to 20-minute videos, but are things you can do with your dog within about a 10-minute time frame. And I have a wide variety of different behaviors on there if you're looking for something new to do with your dog today. So that is patreon.com/for Pete's Sake, FUR Pete's Sake. So thank you all for being my listeners. I enjoy talking to you guys. If you want me to talk about anything specific, make sure to comment and let me know what you'd like me to talk about next. Otherwise, I'll keep chugging along. So enjoy your day, and we will see you next time.